They said I was too old to fight back. They said no one would believe a woman my age. But I am still here, and I have a story to tell. Before I begin, I want to thank you from my heart for giving me your time, your ears, and your kindness. Knowing that someone out there cares enough to listen gives me strength. My name is Ndlovu. I am 70 years old, and these are not just memories of pain, they are lessons. Lessons I pray will give you courage, so you never allow anyone to treat you as less than you are. I was born in a small township outside Cape Town, during a time when women were taught to endure rather than to fight back. My father worked in the mines, and my mother sold vegetables on the roadside. We were poor, but we had each other. I learned very early that life is not fair. But if you keep walking, even barefoot on the hottest ground, you will reach shade eventually. When I was a girl, I dreamed of studying further, but fate had other plans. My father died young, and as the eldest daughter, I was told to leave school and take care of the house. I used to cry at night because books and learning had been my escape, my dream. But instead of letting that dream die completely, I carried it inside me like a seed waiting for better soil. At 19, I married. My husband was not a bad man, but life with him was not the fairy tale I had secretly hoped for. He worked as a carpenter, and we lived in a small shack at first. Together, we built a home brick by brick, literally. I carried sand, mixed cement, and held ladders steady while he hammered the roof. When I look back now, I can still feel the weight of those bricks in my hands. That house was not just walls and a roof, it was our sweat, our promise that one day we would have security. Life gave me 3 children, 2 sons and 1 daughter. My world revolved around them. I washed clothes for neighbors, I cooked in their houses, and sometimes I even cleaned offices late at night to pay for my children's school fees. I remember walking home under the moonlight, so tired that my legs felt like they would break, but inside me there was always this fire. My children will not live the same life I lived. They will study. They will stand tall. Years passed, and slowly, that little house grew into something more. I planted a garden, added rooms, and eventually, I bought the land title. That piece of paper with my name on it, it meant freedom. It meant that no matter what happened, my children would have a roof over their heads. I used to fold that paper carefully, put it inside a tin box, and hide it under my bed. I would take it out sometimes, just to look at it, and whisper to myself, "This is your strength, grace, never forget it." When my husband passed away suddenly, I thought my world had ended. I was in my 40s, with children still depending on me. The nights were the hardest. I would lie awake, listening to the silence of the house, wondering how I could carry the weight of life alone. But somehow I found the courage. Maybe it was for my children, maybe it was because God knew I wasn't done yet. I started selling food by the roadside, making pap and stew for workers passing by. Slowly, I built a reputation. People would say, "Go to Grace's pot, you will not leave hungry." That name, that little business, became another piece of my identity. My daughter was always my closest companion. She was bright, beautiful, and had dreams bigger than my own. I worked double shifts just to pay for her secondary education. When she told me she wanted to study nursing, I thought my chest would burst with pride. I would often say to her, "You will heal others, but remember, never forget the woman who carried you." She would laugh and hug me. And in those moments, I felt my sacrifices were worth it. My sons, too, made me proud in their own ways. One became a mechanic, the other found work in the city. They would visit when they could, always with stories, sometimes with small gifts for me. I didn't care about the gifts. What mattered was that they remembered their mother, that they carried me in their hearts even as they built their own lives. Looking back, my life was never easy. But I believed in patience. I believed in planting seeds, even if I didn't know when the rain would come. Sometimes I would tell my children, life is like this soil we dig, we plant, and sometimes the harvest fails. But if we stop planting, we will starve. That became my philosophy. As the years turned into decades, I found comfort in routine. I woke up early, prayed, cooked, and tended to my garden. I wasn't rich, but I wasn't poor either. I had a home, land, and the respect of neighbors who saw me as a strong woman. People in the community came to me for advice. Young women would ask, Mama Grace, how did you survive? And I would smile and say, survival is not about strength of body, it's about strength of heart. When my daughter married, I felt both joy and fear. Joy because she had found someone she loved, and fear because I knew marriage can be a gamble. You give your life to another person, hoping they will hold it gently, but sometimes they crush it without a second thought. I told her, marriage is not about wealth, my child. It's about respect. If a man cannot respect you, no amount of money will fill that emptiness. She promised me she would never forget those words. I watched her leave my house as a bride, beautiful in white, and I prayed silently. Lord, keep her safe. Let her husband honor her the way she deserves. I didn't know then that this man, my son-in-law, would one day become the shadow that darkened my life. At 70, people think you have seen it all. They think your battles are over, that your days are for rest and storytelling. But sometimes, the cruelest storms come when your hair is already grey. I thought my later years would be filled with peace, watching my grandchildren grow, sitting on the porch with a cup of tea, sharing laughter with neighbors. I thought I had earned that rest, but life, as I have learned again and again, is never predictable. It tests you when you least expect it, just when you think you can finally lay down your burdens. It places another weight on your shoulders, and that is how my story truly begins. When my daughter first got married, I felt a kind of peace in my heart that only a mother can understand. I believed she was stepping into a life of love, security, and companionship. I told myself that her husband would be her anchor in storms, her partner in building a future, and the father who would cherish the family they were to raise together. As her mother, I looked at him not just as my son-in-law, but almost as a son. I gave him respect, space, and trust, but trust is a dangerous thing when it is placed in the wrong hands. For the first few years, everything seemed fine. My daughter smiled whenever I visited her. The house looked well cared for, and there was the hum of a young family building their life. I would walk through her kitchen and see new pots and pans, smell fresh meals, and I'd silently thank God that she was happy. Yet, as time went on, I began to notice something unsettling. My son-in-law, let me call him Peter, had a way of always circling back to money. Every conversation eventually bent toward property, land, ownership, or investment. When he visited me in my home, his eyes would linger too long on the furniture, on the walls, on the expanse of the garden. He asked questions that seemed innocent at first. Mama, when did you buy this land? Or is this house under your name? I laughed those questions away, answering lightly. This is for my children, Peter, this home. This land is my life's work, and one day it will carry on through them. But inside me, a small seed of worry had been planted. I ignored it. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was simply too protective. After all, this was family. He had married my daughter. Why would he ever harm me? Years passed, and I entered my 60s. The truth about aging is this: it humbles you. The body begins to betray you in small, relentless ways. My bones ached in the evenings, my eyesight grew weaker, and I often misplaced small items. A pair of glasses, a set of keys, the name of a neighbour. Normal lapses of age. But to someone looking to exploit me, those lapses were an opening. One day, Peter and my daughter came to me with voices dripping in concern. "Mama," Peter said, "you haven't been feeling well. You need proper medical care." "Yes," my daughter added softly, "you've been forgetting things, and you look weaker. We're worried about you." For a moment, my heart warmed. I thought, how lucky I am to have a son-in-law so considerate, a daughter so attentive. When Peter insisted he would take me to the best hospital in Cape Town, I didn't resist. I trusted him. We went to a private clinic, one that looked more like a hotel than a hospital. They ran tests, asked questions, and after hours of waiting, the doctor came back with a heavy look. "Mrs. Grace," he said, "your cognitive health is deteriorating. These are early signs of dementia. It may only get worse with time. You'll need constant care, and you may not be capable of making important decisions on your own anymore." The floor slipped from beneath me. I stared at him, shaking my head. "That's not true. I may be old, but I know myself. I forget small things, yes, but I am not. I am not lost." The doctor only gave me a rehearsed look of sympathy. "It would be best," he said, "if a trusted family member took charge of your affairs." And then I understood. The whole thing was a setup. The test results, the conclusion, even the doctor's carefully chosen words. My son-in-law had bought them. He had paid for a diagnosis that painted me as unfit to handle my own life. The betrayal settled into my bones like a deep, cold sickness. But the sharpest wound came not from him, but from my daughter. She sat beside him, nodding along. "Mama," she said, "it's for your own good. Please don't fight this. Let Peter manage everything. You'll be safe, safe." I had sacrificed every ounce of my strength, every coin I earned, every tear I shed to raise that girl into a woman. I had carried her through hunger, through storms, through nights when I didn't eat so she could. And now, when I needed her trust the most, she gave it to her husband instead. In the weeks that followed, Peter wasted no time. He filed legal papers, backed by those fraudulent medical reports, declaring that I was mentally unfit. His petition stated that all decisions regarding my property should transfer to him for my own protection. When I received the notice, I nearly collapsed. My home, my land, the fruit of a lifetime of labour, all of it stood on the edge of being stolen under the guise of care. That night, I prayed harder than I had prayed in years. "Lord, you know my heart. You know my mind is still sharp. Do not let them strip me of my dignity. Do not let them bury me alive while I'm still breathing." And yet, prayer alone wasn't enough. I had to fight. I reached out to an old friend of my late husband, a lawyer named Samuel. He had known us for decades, through better days and bitter ones. When I showed him the documents, his face tightened. "This is serious," he said. "They have medical reports, witnesses, and a narrative that will look convincing to the court. But I know you, Agnes, you're not incompetent. We will fight this." The court hearings began. I sat across from my son-in-law, who wore confidence like a tailored suit. He presented the reports, praised the doctors, even convinced my daughter to testify that I was forgetful, unstable, incapable. Each word out of her mouth was a dagger through my chest. I wanted to scream, to beg her to look into my eyes and see her mother standing there, still alive, still present. But she wouldn't meet my gaze. When it was my turn, I rose slowly, my hands trembling. The judge watched me with careful eyes. "Your Honor," I said, my voice thin but steady, "I am old. That much is true. My back aches, my memory sometimes slips, and my body is not what it once was. But my mind belongs to me. I am still here. I know who I am, where I am, and what I have worked for. I told them about my life, about the fields I tilled, the nights I spent sewing clothes by lantern light, the days I carried water for miles just to keep my family alive. I spoke of hunger, of storms, of every sacrifice I made so my children could stand taller than I ever did. If you strip me of my home, my land, my independence, I said through tears, you are not just taking property. You are erasing my life's meaning. The courtroom fell into silence. For a moment, even my daughter's eyes softened. But Peter's jaw tightened, his arrogance unshaken. The battle stretched for months. They had money, they had fabricated evidence, and they tried to bury me under it. But I had something stronger, the truth. I clung to it like a lifeline, repeating to myself every morning, I am not broken. I am not done. And then came the turning point. I remember the morning of the final hearing as if it were yesterday. Cape Town's air was unusually crisp, the kind that makes your lungs ache when you breathe too deeply. I dressed slowly, my hands trembling not from weakness, but from the weight of everything riding on that day. The scarf I chose was my late husband's favorite color, deep blue. I wanted to carry a piece of him with me into that courtroom. He wasn't alive to defend me, but I believed his spirit would stand beside me. As Samuel, my lawyer, guided me into the courthouse, I whispered a silent prayer. God, let truth have a voice today. Let them see me, not the frail body, not the lies, but the woman I am. Peter sat across the aisle, as arrogant as ever. He wore a sharp suit, polished shoes, and the kind of smile that told the world he had already won. My daughter sat next to him, her face pale, her hands fidgeting nervously in her lap. She didn't dare look at me. Perhaps shame held her eyes down, or perhaps fear of her husband's grip on her life. The proceedings began. Peter's lawyers presented their arguments with rehearsed eloquence. They called the doctors who once again waved their papers, repeating that my cognitive health was failing. They painted a picture of me as an old woman lost in confusion, incapable of handling money, incapable of making decisions. Every word felt like another stone thrown at me. But I sat tall, refusing to flinch. Then it was my turn. Samuel stood, steady and sure, and said, Your Honor, the prosecution has shown you words on paper, but today you will hear the truth directly from the woman they seek to erase. He gestured for me to stand. My knees ached, but I rose. The judge looked at me closely, as though weighing every flicker of expression on my face. Mrs. Mwakyusa, he said, You may speak. I took a breath, feeling every eye on me. Your Honor, I began, my voice quiet but strong. I may not walk as fast as I once did. I may forget where I left my spectacles or what day of the week it is. But I have not forgotten who I am. I have not forgotten the sacrifices I made to build my life, to raise my children, and to protect what is mine. I told my story not as a defense, but as a truth. I spoke of the years I labored in the fields, the nights I mended clothes until my fingers bled, the mornings I rose before dawn to sell vegetables in the market. I built this home brick by brick, coin by coin. Every corner of it holds my sweat, my tears, my love. And now they stand here, trying to tell you I am too broken to own what I earned. But I tell you, I am not broken. Not here. I pressed my hand against my chest. Not in my mind. Not in my spirit. My voice cracked as I turned slightly toward my daughter. And you, my child, you know me. You grew up watching me fight for us, for you. How can you stand there and say I am gone? Look into my eyes and tell me you don't see your mother. For the first time in months, she looked at me. Her lips trembled. Tears welled in her eyes. But Peter squeezed her hand, pulling her back into his shadow. I knew then that I had lost her not forever, but for now. Fear chained her tighter than love could free her. The judge listened in silence. When I finished, the courtroom was still. My words hung in the air, heavy and unshakable. Days later, the verdict came. I sat in the courtroom, hands clasped, heart pounding. The judge cleared his throat and began, "This court has reviewed the evidence presented, including medical reports, witness testimonies, and the statements made by Mrs. Mwakyusa herself. While aging brings natural challenges, it does not equate to incapacity. The court finds insufficient evidence to declare Mrs. Mwakyusa mentally unfit. Furthermore, it has come to light that certain medical reports submitted were falsified under the influence of Mr. Peter." At that, a murmur rippled through the courtroom. As such, the court rules in favor of Mrs. Mwakyusa. She retains full control of her property and affairs. Additionally, charges of fraud and conspiracy are to be filed against Mr. Peter. The words struck like thunder. Peter's smug smile shattered. His face went pale, his jaw clenched, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. My daughter gasped, covering her mouth. The gavel fell, sealing the judgment. Tears blurred my vision as relief washed over me. I had fought, I had bled, and I had endured, but I had not been erased. Peter was arrested that very week. His schemes, once hidden behind charm and money, crumbled under the weight of truth. He was sentenced to prison for fraud, his reputation dragged through the mud. The same neighbors who once praised him now spat his name in disgust. As for my daughter, she came to me days later, her eyes swollen from crying. "Mama," she whispered, falling to her knees, "I was wrong. I was weak. I believed him when I should have believed you." I lifted her up, holding her face in my hands. "You lost your way," I told her, "but you are still my child. What matters now is that you see the truth." She wept in my arms, and in that moment, I knew forgiveness was not about excusing betrayal, it was about freeing myself from bitterness. Today, I live with my daughter and my granddaughter in my home. The laughter of a child fills the halls again, and it reminds me why I fought so fiercely. Not just for myself, but for them, for the generations that will follow. When I sit on my porch in the evenings, watching the sun dip below the Cape Town skyline, I feel a deep sense of peace. My body may be frail, but my spirit stands tall. They tried to silence me, to write me off as a feeble old woman, but I showed them age is not weakness. Age is power. It is the weight of every battle fought, every lesson learned, every truth carried. And so, to anyone who hears my story, I say this: do not let anyone tell you your worth has an expiration date. Do not let betrayal convince you that you are powerless. Fight even when your voice trembles. Stand even when your legs shake, because your dignity, once lost, can never be returned. Guard it with your life. I thank you for listening to me, for giving your time to my story. If even one person finds courage in these words, then my pain has not been in vain. May my story remind you that you are never too old, too weak, or too forgotten to rise again.